In the 3rd year after I got married and moved to City A, I became the envious wife of Raymond. In the private room, Raymond was chatting and laughing with friends, ordering me to serve tea. Little did anyone know, beneath the table, the man everyone had to respect, Felix, was leaning against my leg, radiating warmth. Friends praised Raymond for marrying such a great wife. He took a drag from his cigarette and said in fluent German, "Born to be a housemaid, I guess." Felix, who usually avoided these gatherings, suddenly spoke up slowly, "If Raymond doesn't appreciate her, I wouldn't mind marrying her." The party was filled with clinking glasses. I was dressed in a gown but felt more like a servant, busying myself around. The reason was simple. Today's gathering was thrown by Raymond. Everyone was congratulating him on landing another project. Raymond, young and promising. Raymond smiled lazily as he toasted back, glancing towards the door as if waiting for someone. Noticing my gaze, he waved for me to come over, whispering, "Go get that bottle of Romanée Conti from my cabinet." Friends joked about him marrying a good wife, pretty and obedient, taking care of the family. He chuckled and said, "Not as impressive as Christina, who got into Cambridge's architecture school at such a young age." I lowered my eyes and refilled his wine. But then, I heard him say, "What good is being pretty and obedient? Born to be a housemaid, I guess." My fingers trembled, spilling the wine on him. He frowned and asked me to get some napkins. I directed a servant to handle it and went to the balcony alone to get some air. With a cigarette pressed between my lips, I couldn't seem to get the lighter to work, feeling a wave of frustration. "Annie?" I turned and saw Felix, the CEO of M Group. Status-wise, it was a gesture of respect for him to attend today. I greeted him respectfully, "Mr. Felix." Felix noticed the cigarette in my fingers, took out a lighter from his pocket, and leaned in to light it for me. It wasn't appropriate, and I wanted to avoid it, but he was insistent, and I had to lean closer to get it lit. Nights in City A are especially cold. It took a while to get the cigarette lit, the glow highlighting our profiles like a pair of lovers. Once it was lit, I straightened up. "Thank you, Mr. Felix." He smiled warmly, "Just call me Felix." I pursed my lips and took a drag, the minty beads bursting in my mouth, and I felt a bit clearer. A servant called for me, and I nodded farewell. "Felix, see you later." "What's up?" I asked the hurried servant, their voice stammering. "Annie, Christina's here." My eyelid twitched. Why was she back? Before seeing her, I heard her. The once dull room seemed lively with her in that pale yellow dress. Christina, dressed in pale yellow, had flushed cheeks, suggesting she'd been here for a while. She joked around with everyone, saying she couldn't get used to living abroad, and missed City A. Every gesture and glance showed her as the quintessential City A lady. And Raymond, my husband, watched her with admiration, his arm draped over her chair with possessive ease. She was sitting in the place that was supposed to be mine. I looked around, and my gaze landed on the empty seat next to Felix. I walked over and sat down, turning my head. "Felix, we meet again." Playing with a black lighter, he seemed unsurprised, a slight smile on his lips, destined to meet Annie. Everyone laughed. It was rare for the usually serious Felix to say something like that. Raymond squinted, pushing a bottle of liquor towards me. "Felix is here, Annie, why not pour a drink for Felix?" I gulped, suddenly feeling a bit wronged, reaching for the bottle. But his graceful fingers got there first. Felix poured himself a glass. He nodded towards me. "Annie's been busy all night, I should be the one offering a toast to her." He downed the drink casually, his expression unchanged. Everyone looked startled. After all, Felix, the CEO of M Group, never toasted anyone. Yet today, he toasted a married woman. Curious eyes wandered between us, and Raymond's face looked particularly upset. I stood up, planning to see if the desserts were ready. "Sit down, let the staff handle it." Raymond was angry, though it wasn't clear why. So, I sat back down next to Felix. Unlike others, Felix smoked and drank occasionally but never smelled of smoke or alcohol, just a faint woody scent. It matched his personal vibe. Because of the extra seat, we were close enough that our arms brushed when reaching for food, not to mention the warmth against my leg. Wearing a slit dress, my bare skin inevitably rubbed against his tailored pants. It wasn't clear if he did it on purpose, but his leg stayed close, the firm muscle beneath his pants emitting a persistent heat. I felt parched and took a few sips of tea to quell it. At a glance, I saw him swallow, his Adam's apple shifting slightly. Whether intentional or not. This was a small party for Raymond's success. Nobody expected Felix to show up, making their glances towards me even more probing. I absent-mindedly picked up a piece of fruit, only to be stopped before I could eat it. Felix intercepted it, dropping it onto a plate. "Aren't you allergic to apples?" I shot him a warning look, but he seemed unfazed, his shoe nudging up my dress under the table. I gave a slight smile. "Thanks for the reminder, Felix." In German, Raymond griped, thinking I couldn't understand. "Can't even handle apples, she's so delicate." Again, Felix, who usually avoided gatherings, spoke up slowly. "If Raymond doesn't cherish her, I'd marry her myself." The room fell silent, curious eyes lingering between us. I pretended not to understand, accidentally knocking over a teacup, claiming I needed to clean it up. Felix toyed with his lighter, the next moment popping the apple into his mouth. Watching him chew, juice glistening on his lips made it hard to look away. His gaze shifted back, probing, playful, like reminding me of something. After leaving the restroom, I didn't expect to catch Raymond and Christina having a private moment. "Raymond, when will your arrangement end?" "I'm eager to be with you." "Soon, Christina." I heard a muffled grunt from the guy, and I took a step back, bumping into his warm chest. A deep, husky voice whispered in my ear, "Didn't expect Annie to have a peeping habit." "Who's there?" I quickly pulled Felix into a nearby room. As I looked up, I realized my hair was tangled with his button. The heat between us was intense, with a hint of intimacy. Too close. I tried to move back, but his broad hand pulled me closer. "Don't move." His voice was hoarse. "Felix." "Sorry," he whispered. He was so close, those charming eyes right in front of me, working carefully to untangle my hair. His warm breath against my skin felt like slow torture. "Is it done?" He suddenly looked up, our noses bumped, and I leaned back in a panic, causing a sharp pain on my scalp. Felix followed my movement, still holding my waist, pinning me against the wall. His strong arms wrapped around me, and the buttons on his shirt were partly undone, revealing his toned abs. From the next room, came soft, embarrassed sounds. I swallowed, my fingers grazing his moving Adam's apple. "Felix, you started this." I leaned in, our lips met, and the sweet apple taste filled my mouth. Our first kiss also tasted like apples. But back then, I was the one eating the apple. He took charge this time, kissing me over and over. Our breath mingled, making us dizzy and disoriented. After fixing our clothes, I applied red lipstick and put on a burgundy dress. Felix looked a bit worse, maintaining composure, but his hair and shirt were messily disheveled by me. "Felix, fix yourself up. I'm heading out first." He pulled me back, grasping my neck, kissing me again. "Go on," he smirked. Satisfied, he straightened his tie, acting like everything was normal. I licked the corner of my mouth. It had been 3 years, and Felix's kissing skills had improved. Raymond and Christina were back in the room, still close together, like they were about to kiss any second. Christina's lipstick was smeared, clearly for my benefit. As I passed, she grabbed my hand. "Annie, I forgot my lipstick. Can I borrow yours?" She batted her eyes sweetly. "No," I replied. "Annie, it's just a lipstick." "Don't be stingy," Raymond chimed in, making it seem like I did something wrong. I smiled. "This shade's too bold, doesn't suit kids." Christina looked undeveloped, like a child with a baby face. But cuteness doesn't stand a chance against sexiness. In front of her, I still had a say in beauty. She turned to Raymond. Raymond, will you buy me a new lipstick tomorrow? Sure, I'll get you anything, Raymond soothed, treating her like a little girlfriend. Tomorrow was our 3rd wedding anniversary. She chose her days well. After the banquet, Raymond drove Christina home. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. If he goes public, he might flirt around even more. I stood by the entrance, catching a breath, still in my burgundy gown and red-soled heels. They looked fancy but left my feet blistered after a whole day. The night breeze in a city was chilly. Forget about catching a cold, I just wanted to freeze my chaotic thoughts and frustrations. With a cigarette between my fingers, the smoke swirled with the light. Each puff eased the congestion in my heart. A weight on my shoulder, and a woodsy scent enveloped me. I slowly looked up. Felix stood in front of me. Wanna go for a drive? I squinted, sure. The black Cullinan blended into the night. Standing, the red dress and black suit matched perfectly. The driver was absent. I raised an eyebrow as Felix opened the car door for me. Settling into the driver's seat, he even brought out cotton slippers for me. Gently lifting my ankle, he slid them on. The warmth brushing over my foot made me shiver, then he pulled my ankle back in place. His veined hand on my ankle joint was oddly sensual. I teased, Felix, you're so loaded, how come without a driver? Driver had something urgent. We drove quietly, following the GPS to Felix's house. In the villa area. The ride was neither too long nor short, the silence was eerie. I played a violin piece. The strings' melody floated gently until we reached the destination. Turning, I found Felix's eyes closed, as if asleep. I watched him for a while. He hadn't changed, still suited up and dapper. Felix. No response. I called a few more times, then my voice turned cold. Felix. He woke, tilting his captivating eyes towards me, Adam's apple bobbing slightly. Thanks. With that, he got out of the car, disappearing into the night. Felix, your keys, I called, chasing after and grabbing his wrist, only to be pinned against the car door. His husky voice was laced with desire. With one hand protecting my head, the other on my waist, he leaned in close. Annie, how long are you going to pretend? I pushed him away calmly, pretending not to understand. Felix, he murmured, his forehead pressing against mine, breaths hot and lingering, didn't you hate being called that? His hands wrapped around my waist, kissing my cheek. His kiss made me melt into a puddle, barely able to lean onto his shoulder. Felix, I'm married, I whispered. He stared into my eyes, unreadable, brushing my lips. Did he kiss here, too? I shook my head, but his scorching kiss came, as relentless as ever, leaving me breathless. His fingers traveled lower, igniting fire wherever they touched. He kissed downwards, marking his territory. Until a car horn blared, it was the ride I'd called. Gripping his wrist, Felix, stop. He looked down at me, holding my waist, listening. I wiped the moisture from his lips, speaking softly. We ended 3 years ago, Felix. 3 years back, he was a broke entrepreneur. Now, he was the CEO of M Group, a force respected in the business circle. He was out of my league. I got into the driver's car. In the rearview mirror, a man in a black suit leaned against the vehicle. He rarely smoked a thin cigarette, its glow intermittently visible in the dark night. His suit jacket was draped over his shoulders. A faint woody scent lingered, reminding me of the embrace we just shared. When I got home, Raymond didn't look happy. He was probably upset because Christina was asking him for a formal status, or maybe he spent a lot of money buying her a bag. He glanced at the jewelry on my table, complaining, would have taken all these away from you. You should learn from Christina. She never liked such things. Dressing so flashy every day. Anyone who doesn't know would think you're a cabaret dancer. What's wrong with these things? Raymond, are you out of money? Don't tell me you're gonna take my jewelry. His face darkened from my remarks, yet he coldly reminded me, I don't care what it was between you and Felix. Things have changed. He's not someone you should mess with now. What if he starts it first? I looked at my reflection. My lips were slightly swollen. Felix was the kind of thing I had taken down in college. Back then, we were young, all caught up in emotions. We didn't think about the future. Separation was inevitable. I just didn't expect to cross paths again 3 years later. That night, I dreamt of a 20-year-old Felix. He was shirtless, broad shoulders, narrow waist, with a sheen of sweat on his forehead from effort. His slender, teasing eyes squinted slightly, looking at me like I was prey. His voice was hoarse, drawing out the words tenderly, Annie, I'm gonna die right here with you. I opened my eyes, breathing heavily. The heat from my body lingered. That evening, there was a famous charity dinner in City A. Typically, Raymond wouldn't qualify to attend. Yet, we received a Gilded invitation, specifically naming Miss Annie. It wasn't hard to guess whose doing it was. Raymond thought there was a mistake with the name and insisted on going with me. I put on the dress I received that afternoon, a dark green long gown that suited me well. Felix seemed to have waited long, standing there swirling red wine. Many well-to-do ladies tried to chat him up, but got nowhere. Felix noticed us and stepped over. Raymond tried eagerly to flatter, but Felix only nodded, his gaze on me. That dress looks lovely on Annie. I tucked a loose strand of hair, smiling gently, it does. The air conditioning indoors was blasting. Felix took off his jacket, draping it over one arm. His shirt today was a bit tight, outlining strong forearms. I suddenly remembered it was these same hands last night, holding my waist. Annie, did you get an invitation? Christina walked over, holding up her skirt, her eyes fixed on Felix. Felix, can we talk alone later? I have a project idea. Felix adjusted his glasses, Miss Christina, our relationship isn't quite at the level for private conversations. You can talk to my assistant. Christina's face stiffened momentarily, forced a laugh, then turned to Raymond, linking arms. I'll discuss that project with Raymond then. Annie, you don't mind if I borrow him, right? Of course not. I smiled with ease, but Raymond frowned slightly. Watching their backs as they left, Felix politely extended his arm, I'd like to learn about Chinese opera. Would you mind discussing it privately with me, Annie? It would be my pleasure. In the lounge, Felix roughly pinned me onto the sofa, though the surface beneath was soft. He supported my waist, murmuring by my ear, when did we ever end, huh? I don't recall agreeing to break up. You left without a word back then, how should I punish you? His fingers with thin calluses brushed over the fabric of my dress. Heat radiated through, and I looked up at him, chuckling, Felix, are you seeking official status? Felix squinted his eyes, murmured closer to my ear with a tone laced with helplessness, you're the only one who dares say that to me. I smirked, wrapping my arms around his neck, my pleasure. Raymond had lied to me. I was supposed to discuss a collaboration with Miss Judy today. Judy was known for collecting kipeos, so I wore one to the meeting. I didn't expect the person in the private room to be Martin's pot-bellied boss. Even more unexpected, Felix was there too. Martin had a seat saved for me, him on my left, Felix on my right. I had no choice but to sit down. Once seated, Martin poured me a glass of wine. I've heard Annie is a renowned beauty. Seeing you today, it's not an exaggeration. To secure this land deal, Raymond insisted I wear a cheapao, and I knew what he was thinking. A greasy hand was about to land on me, but I subtly moved away. Martin, let me toast you. The liquor burned going down, igniting my stomach and fueling heat down my thigh. It wasn't my imagination. Looking down, a large hand was resting boldly on my upper leg. I shifted, but the grip tightened. Drunkenness and heat intertwined, heightening my senses, feeling his long fingers brush that patch of skin, sending tingling currents. I couldn't help but glance at him, the guilty party coolly fiddling with a lighter, shirt buttoned to the top, an air of restraint, as if it wasn't him being naughty under the table. Did Annie learn opera as a child? Dressed in a cheapao today, could you perform a piece for us? He continued questioning, what about you, Felix? What do you think? I don't think it's appropriate. Felix's calm voice echoed in the room, silence followed instantly. Martin didn't expect Felix to refuse his wishes at that moment. But Felix never aimed to please anyone. Martin's face tensed, then forced a smile. Seems Felix isn't in the mood tonight. Annie, maybe come to my place later to sing. Playful on the surface, but the innuendo was clear. I shyly smiled. Raymond wants me home early tonight. Heat and tingles brushed my thigh. I couldn't hold back a whimper, masking it by sipping water, though the calloused fingertips kept moving. A punishment, for sure. Raymond had already given a heads up. My wife really wants to meet you. Why don't you stay at my place tonight? I was about to find an excuse to leave, suppressing my disgust, when someone nearby suddenly chimed in. Annie said she's coming over to my place tonight to pick up something she forgot. Is that right, Annie? Felix looked at me with an unfathomable expression. He doesn't realize that his seductive eyes always carry an indescribable desire when he looks at someone, pulling you in. Once in the car, he dropped the act, acting like a beast about to lose control but still taking his time to lure you in carefully. He pinned me against the car door and slid his calloused fingers up the slit of my cheongsam. He lowered his head and looked at me, his voice raspy and threatening. Did Raymond ask you to wear the cheongsam, huh? I chuckled and wrapped my arms around his neck. Does Felix like it? Suddenly, he pulled me onto his lap, making me yelp in surprise. Felix. His hand roamed my lower back, leaving a trail of warmth wherever he touched. With a seductive rasp in his voice, he asked, how about divorcing him? I'm 1,000 times better. I laughed. We've already got our divorce papers, just living as a couple by agreement now. Better be that way. If not, it still will be. He kissed me right after that. He knew exactly what techniques I liked, how to make my defenses crumble. In a heated tangle, his strong arms encircled my waist. My phone kept ringing. It was Raymond. In my panic, I accidentally accepted the call. Angry words came flying from the other end. So you didn't go to Martin's, did you? I'm telling you. You better go and apologize tomorrow. Felix pressed his forehead against mine as we exchanged heated kisses. Wet noises traveled through the receiver. Annie, what are you doing? Are you listening to me? Felix grabbed my phone, his voice scratchy as he spoke. Raymond, Annie's not coming home tonight. Who is this? The tension snapped, and after hanging up, I pushed at Felix's chest. Felix, what do you want? Annie, I want to love you. Give me a chance, would you? Felix is shamelessly sweet, coaxing me. Annie, I haven't heard you sing yet. Sing for me, will you? In a raspy voice, I hummed over and over, filling the entire bedroom. He kissed the tiny mole on my collarbone, sending shivers through my body. Annie. When I woke up the next day, Felix was already gone. The note on the nightstand said he had an emergency at work. Breakfast was on the table. I felt a hollow ache inside, and my phone buzzed. It was my therapist, Linda. You've got therapy today, can't put it off anymore. I turned off the screen, got out of bed, and felt the soreness throughout my body. Felix really has changed over the past 3 years. He's improved quite a bit in bed, not just a little. There's an important interview at the company today, and as the second largest shareholder of J Group, I ought to be there. As soon as I sat down, the reporters all looked down at their phones. Their expressions changed, and the next second, they shoved microphones in my face. Miss Annie, is it true you cheated during your marriage? I was stunned for a moment, then answered gracefully with a smile. I don't know what you're talking about. A phone was shoved in front of me, showing a photo of Felix and me kissing on the street. Maybe fearful of provoking him, Felix's face was blurred. Only my flushed face was visible. I smirked. This isn't cheating, that's just my husband Raymond. Raymond might be about the same height as Felix, but their presence couldn't be more different. No paparazzo would dare release Felix's photo. If it appeared, the whole newspaper office might be packing up and leaving the city. The trending topic quickly disappeared. You don't need to guess who was behind that. Backstage, I found Raymond standing there angrily. Who the hell is that guy? Dare to touch my woman, I will find him even if I have to dig through the earth. Christina was there too, fueling the fire. Annie, explain this quickly. Say that you didn't cheat or kiss another man. Her words only fanned the flames, and out of nowhere, a bunch of reporters recorded what was said. Suddenly, photos of Annie kissing a lover were everywhere throughout the city, taking up the biggest space in the newspapers. The news kept spreading, but the photos turned into a blurry mess for both of them. They didn't want to show my flushed face but let the news run wild. This is what small-minded big shots in the city are like. Felix, are you trying to force your way in? Since Annie didn't grant him a formal title, Felix had to go for it himself. Whether there's a title or not, that's not for us to decide. Linda massaged my scalp while gossiping in my ear. Is it Felix? Didn't you already know? Linda and I were college classmates. She moved to this city after graduating. She knew all about me and Felix. He's asking for a title, and you still won't give it to him. Don't bring it up. Felix's mother came to see me. Hearing that, Linda fell silent. Back then, I left Felix without a word for a reason. My father died in a car accident, and my mother squandered all the compensation on gambling. My grandma raised me single-handedly. Felix's mother approached me, agreeing to cover my grandma's surgery and further costs, but only if I left Felix. Felix was struggling back then, starting from scratch with nothing. Trying to succeed in business was hard without connections and financial backing. I knew he came back only after drinking because he didn't want me to worry. I also knew he secretly had surgery for a bleeding ulcer from all the drinking, bringing me flowers on his way home. There's no way I could just ignore it. My mom threatened me into marrying Raymond. His gentlemanly facade got stripped away. We used to be husband and wife, but now we're just business partners. If I get back with Felix now, it feels like I'm betraying the promises of the past. My phone buzzed several times. It was messages from the work group chat. Hey, don't work too hard. Take care of your health, okay? Did you take your meds on time? I nodded, feeling a bit guilty. The 3 years I was married to Raymond weren't pleasant. At first, he pretended to be a decent guy, but eventually, I saw through his act. He was with other women, not just Christina. We got divorced and became business partners. The rumors about his affairs never stopped in those 3 years. I managed the company and covered for his messes. The stress built up and took a toll on my health. I developed anxiety and depression. But after Felix showed up, I started feeling better. Maybe he's the illness and the cure. My phone kept buzzing with notifications. So I told Linda to wrap up the massage, and I headed to the office. When I got there, none of the lights were on. Damn, I got played. Flashes blasted all around me, mics thrust in my face. It was just like the first time Raymond's scandals hit the news, so many reporters, it felt suffocating. Back then, I didn't know how to handle it and it became a psychological shadow. Annie, is the man you were seen with Felix? Did you leave Felix for $1 million? Do you regret that? Are you with him for his money now? No, it's not like that. I tried defending myself, but every word felt weak. My breathing quickened, and everything went black. I fainted. When I woke up, the smell of disinfectant filled my nose. I calmed down and made a call. Let's hold a press conference now. A voice on the other end sounded shocked. Now? Yes, now. Raymond, don't blame me for what comes next. I got in the car and called Felix's assistant. She said he was on a business trip in County A. I dialed his private number and a sweet-voiced woman answered. Before I could speak, my phone died. I sat at the press conference in hospital attire, took a deep breath, and revealed all of Raymond's wrongdoings. There have been many rumors. Let me expose my husband Raymond's transgressions. The crowd gasped, watching the slideshow. Photos of him kissing Christina and proof of his multiple affairs. Plus embezzlement. Fiona rushed into the meeting room, panicked. Big news. I just got off a call with my sister-in-law. Felix looked up briefly, then kept talking. I didn't even say hello before she hung up. Felix's face darkened, and he got up, striding out. The news of the cold CEO's marriage spread like wildfire. M Group's work chats buzzed about the identity of the CEO's wife. Headlines blew up, breaking. A city's business mogul is married. Who captured the heart of this elusive catch? At the same time, a helicopter landed on the roof of J Group. A man in a black trench coat stepped out, the rotor's wind billowing his coat. Staff recognized Felix and escorted him. Felix, dare I ask, who is your wife? Annie. Here's Raymond's evidence, and I declare, on behalf of J Group, that the board has unanimously voted to dismiss Raymond from the CEO position, appointing Annie as acting CEO. The room erupted, Raymond cursed while security held him back. That's all for company matters. Let's clear up my personal life. I paused. Raymond and I divorced 2 years ago. It was a marriage of convenience, no interference, both single. No infidelity. As for that man, not Felix. I paused another 2 seconds, then continued. I'm not familiar with Felix. Then the doors opened, and a man with a heavy expression walked slowly to the interview area. A murmur spread, eyes drawn to him. It was Felix. Cameras clicked non-stop. Felix walked up, his cold expression slowly thawing. My heart raced as I leaned into the mic, press conference over. Please exit in an orderly manner. No one budged, all eyes and cameras on us. Felix stood by my side, took the mic, his gaze fixed on me. His alluring eyes locked onto mine. Hello, everyone, I'm Annie's lover, Felix. Now, her boyfriend, Felix. 2 simple sentences, yet media fodder for a month. The truth unraveled within the M Group. A second of silence, then chaos resumed. Felix, don't you feel aggrieved being the lover? Not at all. She won't give me a title. By timing, Raymond's the third wheel. We've been together for 7 years, we just split for 3. I stared at him, silent, emotions swirling. I didn't know he never felt we parted. If only I'd been braver then, we might not have been apart so long. Our relationship blew up in a city. No one expected Felix's elusive heart to be captured by a married woman. As CEO, I had many duties, while Felix clung even more than when he was 20. He attended events with me, introducing himself wherever possible. Hi everyone, I'm Annie's husband, Felix. His deep voice melted countless hearts. People said he married young, but he only laughed. You can't imagine how long I waited for this. Even married, Felix encouraged me to pursue my dreams. When I was struggling, you reached out to me, Annie, just be yourself. So, I picked up the opera I loved as a kid. Unexpectedly, the learning video went viral online. I juggled company affairs and performed at the theater whenever I had time. After every show, Felix would always wait until the end to hand me a bouquet of flowers. Today, I ran into Raymond by chance. He was dead drunk, collapsed by the roadside. He had patched up some embezzlement issues, but now he's drowning in debt. No wonder Emma mentioned a drunk showing up at the theater lately and warned me to be cautious. I planned to ignore him, but he spoke first. Who would have thought the high and mighty Felix would be a homewrecker, stealing a wife from someone like me? Felix raised an eyebrow. I never said we broke up, so technically, Raymond was the third wheel. His words were filled with smugness, not taking Raymond seriously at all. Thanks to Raymond for handing me the husband spot in Annie's life. But even if he didn't, I would have taken it myself. A phrase flashed in my mind. Why do newcomers get ahead? Because they fight and compete for it. Felix might not be a newcomer, but he sure did fight and compete. Felix almost tore another one of my cheongsams. I pushed him away, my fingers brushing over his warm stomach. His eyes grew dark, and his voice got husky. A lot of people admire how you look in a cheongsam. You know how captivating you look in it. My fingers ran through his fine hair, making a soft whimpering sound. Thankfully, I'm the only one who can see that small mole on your chest. Then he lowered his head. That long spring night, without end, brought echoes of a past romance in City A 7 years ago.